especially with this transfer portal business this season cranked up like never before, and early enrollees, of course. I got to say that every college football team, there is news to talk about. But Ty, I got to say, Arkansas is on the high end of things, and we'll get into that in just a second. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Hogs. We got Ty Hudson on the line. You can catch him on Pig Trail Network and also his podcast as well, Hog Talk Podcast. Ty, how you doing today?
Doing well, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah.
And in talking to you just a few minutes ago before we started to record, there seems to be a whole lot to talk about. So let's start with this 2021 recruiting class brought in by Sam Pittman, ninth in the SEC, number 25 in the country. Several 4 stars at the top of the board. What stands out to you is most of these guys are getting on campus as we speak.
Yeah, well, a lot of offensive production will be expected out of this class. Really strong on the offensive end. I caught a little bit of smoke, caught a little bit of heat because I claimed I'd said that on the Pig Trail Network, or maybe it was the Hog Talk Pod. I can't remember where I said it. I flapped my jaws a lot. But I'd said that the recruiting on the defensive side of things, was like a D-. Wasn't very good. And I stand by that, and I really thought they need to answer some more questions there. And then something we talk a lot about is quality depth. It's something we've been saying on the Hog Talk going back to when Jacob Davis and I were just started the podcast out. We mentioned it often, quality depth. It's hard to tell. I mean, you always have these guys, 2 or 3 stars that could spring up and be great. We see that all the time. And especially schools like Arkansas, where these guys that aren't, they don't have the star power, but they end up being pretty solid. And this class, maybe that's the case. Linebacker is a position. I think last time we talked, I had mentioned, the concerns that I have at the linebacker position. And they did sign 3 linebackers. Christopher Paul was one of them. Marco Avant out of Jonesboro, Arkansas, who I've been told was vastly under recruited. And of course, I can't find the third one. I had it pulled. Oh, there it is. Jermaine Hamilton Jordan was the third one. I've heard that all 3 were overlooked, and that should be excited about all 3 of them. But we hear that a lot, and linebacker's just not been a great position for Arkansas lately, outside of maybe Dre Greenlaw, Scooter Harris. You go back to Brooks Ellis, the young man that played at Fayetteville High School, who was a starter every year he was here, but really didn't produce on the field like you would like to have seen. But then you fast forward to 2020, and Grant Morgan, who's a walk-on, was phenomenal. Bumper Pool, despite missing, I think, a game and a half, I think he missed at least 6 or 7 quarters worth of play on a 10-game schedule, still wound up averaging close to 12, 13 tackles a game. Some passes defended. So, again, you look behind those guys, though, right? Do they answer any of the questions behind them in this class? I don't think so. Defensive back, another area. I really wished. I know they got Chase Lowry, kid out of Frisco, Texas, that I think he was rated like top 70 at his position in the country. They wound up with a couple of 3-star guys there. And again, stars don't tell the entire story, as you well know, and I'm sure your audience is well aware of. I just was not a big fan of what they did defensively in this class. But on the offensive end, I mean, they killed it. I thought this was one of the strongest offensive recruiting efforts we've seen. Katron Jackson, highly rated 4-star receiver out of Texas, who the Longhorns went after hardcore there towards the end. Really wanted him, and he chose the Razorbacks over the Longhorns. AJ Green, a 4-star athlete out of Union High School there in Tulsa. Oklahoma State was all over this kid. Oklahoma, I believe, was rumored to offer him as a corner, or as a defensive back, not as a running back. But, I obviously can't confirm that, but I think they had an offer on the table. But, I mean, they walked in there and they took him and a couple of other pretty good players out of the state of Oklahoma. And again, AJ Green, someone I am really excited about. At the running back position, Raheem Sanders, another 4-star athlete. They picked him up out of Rockledge, out of Florida. Someone that also could have an impression year one. So It's a top heavy class. I was surprised they finished. And again, I think the last time you and I talked, I think I'd said that I didn't expect them in the final signing period, which was the first week of February, for them to stick around in the top 25, and they did. They finished 25th, and like you said, 20 or ninth in the SEC. So, got to be happy with that. But Sam Pittman recruiting is a focus, big time. Like it is everyone. There's no staff in the country, Power 5 or non-Power 5, that doesn't realize that they have to have a focus on recruiting. But that's one of Sam Pittman's strengths. That was one of his strengths when he was an offensive line coach here, when he was at Georgia. And so it looks like it's paying off for the Razorbacks. Top 25 class in the for the 2021 class, and they got some talented young men in that class.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Hogs. We got Ty Hudson on the line from Pig Trail Network and also Hog Talk Podcast. So track him on those two. Just follow him on Twitter, and you can track him right to, again, Pig Trail Network and his Hog Talk Pod. So I'm going to extend kind of on the thought process of your concern here, because there are going to be tons of 3-stars all over the country signed by teams that are going to turn into impact players, all conference players, even all Americans. Okay, here's the concern, though, is that we know that in mass, though, in bulk, the star rankings mean something. The ratings mean something. So you got the 3 linebackers that you mentioned. Christopher Paul, inside linebacker, number 35 at his position. You've got Marco Avant, who's an outside linebacker. He's 54th rated at his position. Then another outside linebacker in Hamilton Jordan, who's number 56, right in the same range as Avant. So if you bring in 3 linebackers that are rated, let's say, top 15 in the country, most likely all 3 are going to turn out to some degree. They're going to contribute to the program. Maybe one's going to be a star. Maybe the other one's going to be a starter. Then the other guy's going to be a quality backup or something like that. That's what the odds say. When you bring in 3 guys of this caliber, maybe you get one that becomes a starter, maybe 2, just the likelihood just is far less. And so I think that's part of your concern right there. I did have a question about the 2 athletes. So yeah, if we go to the top of the board, it's flooded with those 4 stars on offense. And a couple of those guys, AJ Green and Raheem Sanders, are athletes. So that always reeks of either defensive back or wide receiver. So are both of those guys most likely going to be wide receivers?
Well, so the belief is that AJ Green will be a running back. He's going to be behind TJ Hammonds and Smith, your 2 starting backs, Smith, who came along, Traylon Smith, who came along really well in the absence of Rakeem Boyd, who just took, I don't know what happened to Rakeem Boyd. I know he had some injuries in the offseason or injury last year. He had to have repair surgery in the offseason. And this year, I don't know if 2020 I don't know what happened. Maybe it was the coaching change and his style of play didn't match, whatever the case. Traylon Smith steps in. TJ Hammonds, who's he's capable of making plays anytime he has the ball in his hands. But then the question is always at Arkansas, who's the next guy up at running back? Because as we all know, or anybody who's paid attention to college football the last 25 years, Arkansas for a while was considered RBU. Guys like Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, Peyton Hillis. You fast forward a little bit, Nile Davis, Alex Collins, who rushed for 1,000 yards every year he was here, Jonathan Williams, stacked at the running back spot. And that's always a question, like, who's their star running back in this class? AJ Green, clearly, when you watch film, highly recommend you watch his film. For anybody who's watching this kid is explosive. He hits the outside edges really fast. Looks like he has really good vision. Initial burst, as soon as he has the ball in his hands, it's just there. So he'll end up playing running back. Again, was offered as a defensive back from some other schools, but had some big time offers to play running back from some big schools. Raheem Sanders, there's a little bit of a question. He was recruited by Justin Stepp, and I think we're going to talk about the coaching changes here in just a second. But Justin Smith, who went on to South Carolina, now they got a new guy there, Kenny Guyton. I don't know what that transition means for him. You still have the same play caller and Kendall Briles. I'm sure it's going to be left up to Kendall what to do with Raheem, a.k.a. Rocket Sanders. He could play either position, and I wonder I wonder if they just kind of, maybe they'll move him to the slot in certain formations. Maybe they'll move him out of the backfield in motion. They'll move him around a little bit, assuming he sees playing time this year, which I think that he will. Especially in games where if they are allowed to play their non-conference schedule, you expect them to have these huge leads in those games. So maybe he'll get some playing time late. But these are two outstanding athletes. And Raheem, I think, is expected. He was recruited to play wide receiver, and I believe that was from Justin Stepp, who again is no longer there. I'm sure that's the plan that Kendall has for him, is to play receiver. But I think he'll end up probably playing a dual role there.
So I'm also seeing 4 of the top 10 players in the state of Arkansas signed with the Hogs. So that would be Terry Wells, Javion Hunt, also Jalen Williams, and Keenan Parker as well. So my thought process there, and I know from talking to a Texas A&M guy just the other day that they were able to reel in the number 1 player in the state of Arkansas to go to the Aggies. So that's 4 out of the top 10 players in the state. What is the status of Arkansas high school football these days?
Oh, well, this is going to be a really strong class in the state of Arkansas. And there's one thing that they have everything, all the ingredients to be a great program, right, in college football. The reason why they're so inconsistent, outside of hiring guys like Chad Morris, and to a lesser degree maybe Brett Bielema, who, a lot of fans here just despise Brett and Chad for obvious reasons, but outside of some questionable coaching hires, it's geography. The state of Arkansas does not produce a ton of talent. We're maybe a couple steps behind Oklahoma or neighboring Tennessee, but we just don't put out a lot. This year, it's not a top heavy class. Quincy McAdoo, who's right now committed to Florida State, I don't know that he stays committed to them just yet. I've talked to one individual who said that could, to keep an eye on that, especially over the summer. And we know they extended the dead period. I can't remember to June, if I'm not mistaken.
June 1st. Yep.
So we'll see what happens this summer if they're allowed to actually go into the homes of these players. But Quincy McAdoo out of Clarendon, Arkansas, Isaiah Centegna right down the road from where I live here in Fayetteville, 4-star wide receiver. You got 2 4-star tackles in Marion Harris and Andrew Tremblay, big-time players, both guys 6'5", 6'6". Harris, who's over 300 pounds. Another kid out of Maumelle, Arkansas, Nico Davalier, who's right now rated as a top 500 player in the country, top 30 at his position as a defensive tackle. I think it's going to be a little bit of a battle to get him, because he's pretty quick for a defensive tackle, pretty athletic for someone that size. Again, 6'4", 275. You've also got Isaiah Broadway, who out of Sylvan Hills, I believe, actually moved in to Arkansas during the offseason. He didn't actually play high school football here a year ago. I think he came out of Texas. I could be wrong on that, but he's down at Sylvan Hills. And Travell Anderson, another running back, 6 foot, 190 pounder. They are, again, we talk about 3 stars. It's almost like 50-50, their odds of either being great or maybe just being contributors, right? Maybe they weren't great, but they're at least on the field. I think they've got, out of this top 10, J.J. Hollingsworth, who's currently committed, Dax Courtney, who's also committed to Arkansas right now. I think you're looking at probably 12, maybe 14 SEC or Power 5 quality players. And again, for Arkansas, that's doing pretty good. It's a pretty good class, and there's more to come. Of course, you can expect the rankings to change. There's another kid, Joseph Hyman II, out of Pulaski Academy. This kid is breaking records down there, and I cannot for the life of me understand. And Kyle Sutherland, my Friday co-host, he's also the host of the Monday show on the Hog Talk. He's been talking about Joseph Hyman for a while, and he's actually been able to lay eyes on him. This kid is electric, and he's right now rated at the number 11 spot. I think he's kind of dropped a little bit, but he holds some pretty impressive offers, and for whatever reason, Arkansas has not offered him. I don't know where he goes as far as star power and rank, but I do think he's someone that Arkansas, they cannot let this kid slip out. And I realize there's James Joyner, Travell Anderson. There's some great running backs in this state. It's kind of getting back to the old days when Arkansas was pumping out good running back talent. And I don't know how you let someone like him, Joseph Hyman II, again, out of Pulaski Academy in Central Arkansas, I don't know how you let him slip out of the state he's big time talent.
Good stuff from Ty Hudson. You can catch him on his Hog Talk Pod and also Pig Trail Network, talking up the hogs each and every day. Sponsor us here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. If you've got a direct line to one, just contact me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Also, we're on Patreon for 15 cents per day, exclusive live streams, watch parties, predictions, everything right there. So support the channel right there. So you pretty much reviewed 2021 and 22 with Henderson, Hollingsworth, Courtney, and Dubinin, if I pronounced his name correctly.
Yeah, Dubian, I think is how you're supposed to pronounce it. Yeah. He doesn't have any stars next to his name right now, but talking to a couple of people here in local media, they fully expect him to get a pretty big jump. 5'10", 185-pounder out of Georgia. And, I mean, that's a pipeline that Sam Pittman holds, obviously coaching there for a little while.
Though the record wasn't sterling at 3-7, the vibe, the attitude, the perception of Arkansas football just went through the roof based on what people watched on the field, a win taken away on the plains at Auburn, and just the level of play was just leaps and bounds over what it was the two previous seasons. No question about that. So it was a feel-good season for the Hogs, despite just the 3 wins. So obviously the upgrade on the offensive side was substantial. The defense just turned the ball over constantly to be able to set up the offense. And it was just an overall good season for Arkansas, pointed in the right direction. Then, bam, you get hit with a lot of coaching changes that were pretty unexpected.
Yeah, I would argue. Well, I was shocked. I'm not going to lie about it. I think the last time we talked, I didn't see many big changes coming. I thought they'd kind of gotten over the hump. Of course, I'd said on my live show multiple times that it's not over till it's over, and you don't really start to feel comfortable until you creep up on March, and that's typically when you're starting to prep for spring camp. And at that point in time, it's coaching changes. Not that they don't happen, but they the odds of them happening drop. And I didn't feel like they were going to lose maybe an assistant, right, or a conditioning coach, or some grad assistants or whatever. But yeah, a little surprising. Justin Stepp, wide receiver coach, who I've talked to you about, maybe the best receiving, maybe as far as a recruiting standpoint, the best receiver coach Arkansas's ever had. I mean, the talent that he brought in, and I know not all of them stuck around. TQ Jackson, Shamar Nash, Trey Knox, those were all 4-star prospects. But then you look at Treylon Burks, who's a possible first-round draft pick. That's his guy. You look at the production on the field this year. Mike Wood steps up when Trey Knox, who did not perform well this year for whatever reason, Mike Wood steps up. Devion Warren, who's considered a special teams guy his entire time at Arkansas, and then this year before he gets hurt, he balls out. I mean, he looked incredible, right? And so I felt like recruiting-wise and on the field, getting these guys ready, I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due. No doubt that Justin Stepp, big time on this staff, and it was so important to retain him. He stuck around when Chad Morris, he was one of Chad Morris's guys, and he stuck around with Sam Pittman, and of course I was excited about that. And we saw what happened, and then in this recruiting year alone, 4-star Katron Jackson, big time player, that he recruited. So he leaves for South Carolina. He gets a little bit of a pay raise, I think maybe $50,000 or $60,000 a year, and he gets to go home. He's from that area, so you understand that. He's replaced with former Colorado State receiving coach Kenny Guyton. I don't know a lot about him other than, Colorado State fans, what little research or what little I was able to find during my research was that they were pretty bummed that he was leaving. They felt like they had a pretty big shift in the right direction at that position, his short time there. So he's your next guy up, and they're in on a 4-star, big time 4-star receiver who recently was just crystal balled to Arkansas, Faison Wilson. 6'4", 215-pound wide receiver. And it's sounding like Arkansas is going to make his short list, which is huge. And that would be great considering you just lost, again, an elite recruiter like Justin Stepp. So we'll see what happens at that position. Obviously, I'm more concerned about what you do on the field than anything as far as development. And then you had probably the biggest surprise for me, which was Ryan Rhodes, linebacker coach, who missed a ton of time. Well, I say a ton of time, 6 to 7 quarters this year, and he still averaged around 13 tackles a game. Played on a 10-game schedule. Played like an all-conference caliber linebacker. I've said that about him since he committed to Arkansas. Like, that kid's got it. He's got the it factor. I liked what I saw on film. Never really saw that kind of production until this year. Ryan Rhodes, first year's linebacker coach, and then Grant Morgan, a former walk-on. He was a walk-on, and this kid's an All-American and was on the short list for the Burlsworth Award. I think he finished second. I can't really remember, but he was on the short list regardless. And you're talking about an All-American, okay? Two big-time guys as far as production on the field, and Grant Morgan will probably be a preseason All-Conference All-American going into 2021. So Ryan Rhodes steps back, and I don't know the full story. I think we've heard a little bit here and there, but he's stepping back, and it sounds like, we know this, Michael Schurer, someone who actually played under current defensive coordinator Barry Odom at Mizzou. He was the quality control guy for the linebacker position in 2020 at Arkansas. Again, he played under Barry Odom, was actually projected as a prospect in the NFL draft, but he got hurt, and it ended his likelihood of doing anything at the next level.
Remember him well.
He was an outstanding player, and he's going to be your linebacker coach. So I guess it's understandable, that connection, but when you look at the production on the field, I thought Ryan Rhodes was excellent. And then you move on to John Cooper, your tight end coach. He's out. Again, not super shocking, but I felt like the tight ends, as the year went on, they started to show out a little bit. He's replaced by Cody Kennedy, who in 2018 was actually a graduate assistant at Georgia under Sam Pittman. So again, that's not a huge surprise there. And then Derek LeBlanc, who I know the NFL was knocking on his door. I honestly don't know where he ended up, but they end up getting Jamariel Ashley, who was the Tulsa defensive line coach. And I get that hire. Nothing you can do if LeBlanc's going to the NFL. I understand this hire because Tulsa is a pipeline for Arkansas. And that's somewhere, like I mentioned earlier, that they've had a lot of success in that state, in the state of Oklahoma. Walking in there and taking players away from Oklahoma State, who we all know they're winning 8-9 games a year. They're usually predicted to be top 4, top 5 in the Big 12. So they want to keep doing that. They want to keep adding some talent out of the state of Oklahoma. So, yeah, quite a few surprising moves, or at least a couple really surprising moves for Arkansas.
Michael Scherer racked up 266 tackles as a linebacker at Mizzou with 17 tackles for loss. And here's my slice on Kenny Guyton, Ty. As soon as you mentioned that name, I Googled him just to make sure it's the same Kenny Guyton I know of as backup quarterback at Ohio State. So his claim to fame there is that he threw 6 or 7 touchdown passes. He tied the Ohio State record for a single game against a undermanned Florida A&M team that lost like 77-0 in that game. He threw, I believe, 7 touchdown passes in that game. Yeah. And he was Braxton Miller's backup, came in and threw 14 touchdowns that season. And his claim to fame, in addition to that, that Ohio State team went undefeated, 12-0, and they would not have had Kenny Guyton not come in for an injured Braxton Miller and led them to a last-minute touchdown drive, 2-point conversion with seconds left in the game against Purdue, which salvaged a perfect season. Then he threw the game-winning touchdown pass in overtime after he threw the game-tying touchdown pass and 2-point conversion in regulation. So that doesn't help you as a wide receiver coach, but that's what I've got for you on Kenny Guyton.
Yeah, I knew he'd played at Ohio State. But other than coaching at Colorado State, I didn't really know much about what he'd done coaching-wise. Know him well. I remember the name. He was actually on the field when they beat Arkansas in the Sugar Bowl. He was on that roster anyways. And, Hog fans, of course, remember that one very well. Ohio State was supposed to be in some trouble there after trading. I think they traded merchandise for –
yes, and they were. It ruined their next season. And that's actually the reason why 2 years later, Kenny Guyton saved a perfect season that didn't result in a BCS championship because they couldn't go to play in postseason play because they were on probation.
Yeah, that sounds. I think I remember that now.
Yes, Ohio State took a big lead. Arkansas came back. Ryan Mallett threw the pick late and sealed it.
Yeah.
Ty Hudson, good stuff on Hog Talk Pod and also on Pig Trail Network. So Ty, let everybody know where they can find you so they can latch onto your work.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you wanna follow me on YouTube, it is the Pig Trail Network YouTube channel. I focus only on Arkansas content. I don't do, it's just Arkansas, a little bit of SEC. It's mostly post-game live shows at the moment, especially with, COVID. And I think we talked last time, I'm virtual learning at home with my kids, so my schedule is just, it's crazy right now. But I used to do quite a bit of edited content, but these days it's mostly live shows. Have a blast doing it. And also on the Hog Talk podcast, I'm the co-creator of that, myself and Jacob Davis, he's moved on to Arkansas Fight. He's now the site editor there, but now myself, Kyle Sutherland, Porter Hayes, Kevin Bohannon, who's our baseball guy, we hold down the fort for the Hog Talk podcast, and it's done really well. Love working with those guys. And so you can catch that again. Those shows are they're on iTunes, wherever you can listen to or download podcasts. You could find the Hog Talk, and those are Mondays typically and Friday shows. And again, the Pig Trail right now is focused on basketball. We're doing right now post game shows at the moment, but hopefully, like you and I talked before we went live, with spring camp coming up, assuming it happens, assuming we have some form of, maybe it's open to the public. I'm going to focus a lot of content on that. So yeah, there's a lot going on right now in the world of everything that I do here. There's a lot going on.
Well, Ty, I'm the guy that's trying to keep track of everyone, so I appreciate you coming on here to break down Arkansas personnel to get me caught up, and now that gives me the impetus to get online and track a few of these guys and learn a little bit more. So good stuff out of Ty Hudson. Again, Pig Trail Network and Hog Talk podcast. Ty, we appreciate that, and hopefully we'll find out more about spring practice here pretty soon, have you back and break down some positions.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.